story you are about to see was inspired by actual events. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
It was Tuesday morning. It was warm in Los Angeles. My partner and I were working the day shift out of Robbery-Homicide. The call came in at 10:15. Robbery. A jewelry store in Westwood. But not just robbery. A customer down. Shot in the head. The jewelry store was on a block of high-end shops. The kind of place that once upon a time was called carriage trade.
LAPD detectives Joe Friday and his partner Frank Smith parked their unmarked cruiser in front of Lepori's Jewelers.
You had to be good to pull this off. This neighborhood, you don't do a smash and grab through the window. On the other hand, if you're really good, you don't leave a dead body behind. My name's Friday. I'm a cop.
They left a lot behind.
Well, they got something. They didn't do this and take nothing for their trouble.
Crouching over the deceased, Detective 3 Joe Friday reads the contents of the victim's wallet.
The dead man was named Arthur Canrinas. He lived on the other side of the city in Sherman Oaks. The West LA detective filled us in. Canrinas was killed while silently sitting on the floor. Point blank to the head. These weren't just robbers. They were cold-blooded machines.
Detectives interview jewelry store manager Gunther Helmstead.
They wore ski masks. One of them put a gun in my face and pushed me in here. He made me open this safe.
They knew what was in it.
The special pieces that had just arrived for Oscar night.
Describe what we're talking about.
Several necklaces, sets of earrings, diamond tiara. Have you heard of the Tear of Aragon? It's a very famous diamond.
Total value.
Altogether, we're in the neighborhood of 40, 45?
Million?
When Whoopi Goldberg hosted in 99, she wore $41 million worth of Harry Winston.
All this, only one guard out front.
A second guard was due tomorrow. That's when the jewels were originally supposed to come in from New York.
So they arrived one day early.
Yeah, we'll need a list of those privy to that little fact.
Of course, that would include a number of actresses, some of their people, my employees. There's one more thing. That safe, the one they ignored, it's a dummy. It holds replicas, fakes. The Tear diamond, only this one does not cut glass. It is glass.
And they knew it. A well-planned job, but someone got shot. We thought the store guard might be able to tell us why.
Detectives walk outside to a parked ambulance where 33-year-old security guard Elias Watson is being treated by medics.
What happened to them?
He shot and I grabbed him. Reflex, I guess. His partner hit me with his gun. Tried to stay on my feet and back away, but he hit me again and I went down.
The victim tried to run for it?
Never moved.
They shot him for no reason. Did he say something?
Nothing. The guy looked at him and shot him. Cold.
Elias Watson is visibly shaken, and Frank rests a comforting hand on the guard's shoulder. Later, Joe Friday and Frank Smith review security video of the holdup.
Robber number 1 takes the manager into the back, leaves number 2 at the front.
Number 3 stays with customers. Something tells me they've done this before. All right, look at the guns.
With his face close to the monitor, Joe identifies the Sig Sauer 40mm automatic pistol.
All identical Sig Sauer 40s. These guys came well equipped.
All totally worked out until this. Number 2 walks over to the guy on the floor, takes off his glasses, and bang, shoots him for no reason.
Ouch.
The guard grabs number 2, and number 1 runs back in.
The guy who's running the show, he completely loses it. Hits him again. Scoops up the shell casings.
Watson's account matches the security video, which in turn yields additional clues.
Grace under pressure.
Well, the Vic must have said something.
Not according to witnesses. Rewind that, please.
I can have frames blown up if you need a closer look.
Closer look at masks won't help me. I'm seeing plenty.
No close-ups, but Friday does request a photo still from each video.
Same shoes, same Sig Sauer automatic, same clothes. Number 1. That's our guy. He's
He's vicious, control freak. He's a planner. Smart.
If detectives can figure out why Arthur Canrinas was killed, maybe they can figure out who killed him. Detectives Friday and Smith brief their immediate supervisor, Captain Ruth Hagerman.
And takedown. They go in, hit fast. They're efficient. They're getting what they want.
And then for some reason, one of them takes the glasses off of a customer and puts a slug between his eyes.
He must have provoked them.
Witnesses say he didn't open his mouth.
Trigger-happy robber? Doesn't go with efficient. Why was this customer shot?
I don't know.
We're thinking they weren't working alone. The jewels came in a day early and they knew about it.
Inside job.
We're interviewing possible insiders.
One of your possibles just got upgraded to probable. Clerk at the store, Gary Cowgill. Co-worker let slip Gary's had some gambling problems. 2 bookies, 30 grand in debt.
Gary Cowgill is brought in for questioning. Interview room 6A.
I knew I'd end up here.
Why is that, Gary?
Hey, you think they had inside help?
But why you?
I've had a gambling problem. I'm sure you knew that.
These jewels came in a day early. Did you know about that?
Along with everyone else.
I could settle a lot of debt selling that type of information.
I'm turning my life around. The last thing I want is this kind of grief over a bunch of stolen jewels.
And a murder.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Art seemed like a real nice guy.
Art. Arthur Canrinas, the guy that got shot.
Yes, he'd been in several times over the past couple weeks looking for an anniversary gift. I was trying to interest him in a pair of emerald earrings.
Kept coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Kept coming back. Why had he kept coming back? Arthur Canrinas had been to Lepori Jewelers several times. Why did he visit the crime scene over and over before the crime? He wanted an anniversary present? After all those visits, why had he never bought it?
Detectives Joe Friday and Frank Smith drive to the home of the deceased and meet with the widow, Laura Canrinas.
Mrs. Canrinas, you have an anniversary coming up, don't you?
Anniversary? No. Our anniversary's 7 months away.
Really? Oh, the clerk must have been mistaken. How long were you married?
It would have been our 4th.
This woman had no idea why her husband was shopping for jewelry. Was he buying it for someone else? Or was Arthur Canrinas in that store for another reason?
Something so stupid just takes it all away.
The spacious yet modest living room is decorated with baseball pennants and framed football posters.
Your husband was quite a sports fan.
He made his hobby into his work. He opened a store with collectibles and signed memorabilia, you know, that sort of thing.
Do you know any of his friends, colleagues, people he associated with?
Some.
Any of them maybe have any trouble with the law?
What?
Our questions have to go in a lot of different directions.
But why? I mean, you don't think that Arthur was
No,
involved
Miss
with
Canrinas. We're just trying to solve his murder.
Back at Parker Center, the 2 cops compare notes.
Canrinas rears his head on the federal search.
Our victim has a record?
A federal employment record. Up until 5 years ago, he worked for the Treasury Department. Secret Service. Plenty of chances for colorful contacts.
Or temptations. You think he went to the other side?
I don't know, who can say, but it's odd. He quit 4 years shy of a federal pension. We called the Treasury Department. Arthur Canrinas had worked undercover investigating white-collar crime. His former boss came in to see us.
He was a traditional guy. Always wanted a family. Tough proposition when you're working undercover.
What kind of cases?
Credit cards, electronic funds, counterfeit. Treasury casts a pretty wide net. It was the kind of a case made Art realize he had to get out.
Why is that?
Undercover gets real dicey. You get sniffed out, they'll put bullets in you.
So he wanted a family, but not with the job.
Seems like he never told his wife about his past.
When he met her, she was a librarian. She had no understanding of the world Art was from. He didn't want to scare her off. Actually, the last time I saw him, he said he was going to tell her. Enough time had passed and he felt safe. I guess he never got the chance.
Maybe she'd like a call from an old colleague, huh? Better she hear it from you than read it in some newspaper down the line.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Frank Smith is on the phone learning more about victim Arthur Canrinas' sports memorabilia business. Once again, Friday reviews the security video. Why does robber number 2 take off Canrinas' glasses and then shoot him in the head execution style? Joe Friday focuses on the floor's layout. On the left section of the screen is the jewelry store entrance. On the right side are the sales counters, and at the bottom of the monitor is the other door leading into the room with the safe. Joe takes out the hard copy he had printed from the video. Entry on the left, counters on the right, safe at the bottom.
Light on that tape of yours.
Joe hears his partner finishing his phone call on an up note.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get right on it. Canrinas' sports memorabilia business cleared 6 figures 3 years in a row.
Well, maybe he was there buying jewelry.
So why'd they shoot him?
Let's look at the one thing we do know. Robber number 2 took off Canrinas' glasses.
I get it. Like you recognized him. You're thinking the shooter knew him.
Maybe someone he put away when he was working undercover. You know what I think happened? Arthur Canrinas was an innocent bystander, had nothing to do with the robbery. Wrong place at the wrong time.
Guys, there's someone out in the lobby asking for leads on the Lepori robbery. Says she's the PI for the insurance company.
Go. I'll work Canrinas.
Putting on his jacket and centering his tie, Detective Frank Smith takes an elevator down to the lobby. Exiting the elevator, he spots an olive-skinned woman wearing designer clothing and carrying a clipboard. He approaches and extends his hand.
I'm Detective Frank Smith. Can I help you?
I'm hoping we can help each other, actually. I'm Katrina Fleury, work in investigation and recovery for Simpson Guest.
Simpson Guest?
The underwriters for the Lepori jewels.
Really?
In black heels, she stands 5'4", weighing 125 pounds. Long brunette hair pinned up in a bun. Private investigator Katrina Fleury is approximately 30 years old. She wears a black short-sleeved crewneck sweater over a basic black stretch cotton fitted skirt.
So the insurance company has hired a PI?
Yes. I'm really a specialist in the recovery of artworks, antiques, jewelry.
As she speaks, Katrina writes something on the back of a glossy business card.
I would like it if we could stay in close touch on this. I'm staying at the Peninsula. My cell's on the back.
She puts the card in Frank's hand.
Right, sure.
The recovery of the gems is naturally very important to me.
Well, it's too bad we can't recover Arthur Canrinas.
I'm sorry?
There was a homicide?
Oh, of course. I'm jet lag. I must have forgotten the names.
Pearl-studded earrings, her fragrance a subtle nod to jasmine.
I just wanted us to meet so that if I call you, you have a face to go with the voice.
Yeah.
The two shake hands and her smooth grip lingers. Katrina looks the man over and lets go, slowly. As Katrina Fleury walks toward the exit, the elevator doors open. Joe Friday steps out and follows his partner's gaze.
Doesn't look like a PI.
More like a Bond girl.
Arthur Canrinas put dozens of people behind bars, mostly white collar, except for a thief named Thomas Rector.
Jewel thief?
Banks, bearer bonds, jewels. Mr. Rector didn't discriminate. Guess where he's living?
L.A.
Credit card check. Paid for a hotel room 2 days ago near Skid Row.
So wait, the guy just pulls $40 million in jewels and flops on Skid Row?
Former Treasury agent Arthur Canrinas was killed by robber number 2 on the video. Is robber number 2 the same person as career criminal Thomas Rector? For a 100-year-old building in such a bad part of town, the 6-story San Julian Hotel is in reasonably good repair.
Professional criminals stay in places like this when they're broke. Thomas Rector wouldn't be living here if he had any money. If this was what I thought it was, I figured Rector was just biding his time, waiting for his share of the Lepori robbery, waiting for whoever planned the job to sell the jewels. When the payoff came through, Rector would be out of here fast. Vegas, Reno, chorus girls, and gambling, blowing all the money he had just earned.
Entering the building, Joe and Frank meet the hotel manager, who confirms their person of interest is staying at the San Julian, but no one has seen Thomas Rector since he checked in the day before yesterday. The manager gets the spare room key, and the three men ride the elevator up to the 6th floor. Approaching room 602, detectives signal the manager to stand back. Friday and Smith press themselves back against the wall on either side of the door frame. Inside the room, the TV is on, which means one of two things. Rector is either there, or he is not. Joe Friday mouths to Wilkins, "Call him."
Rector?
Friday signals again, "Call him."
Rector! I told you. Haven't seen him the past couple of days.
Give me the keys.
Guns drawn, safeties off, detectives storm room 602 and find Thomas Rector in an easy chair, slouched over to one side, a bloody exit wound at the back of his head. Looking at Rector's limp right arm, detectives visually follow it down to his hand, then to the dropped automatic pistol laying on the carpet next to the easy chair. As their adrenaline begins to subside, Joe and Frank exchange a grimace. It's the unmistakable smell of death. Without disturbing evidence, Frank Smith looks closely at the gun laying near the recliner.
6 Sauer 40. Same gun used as the robbers.
Suicide, huh? All very convenient.
Room 602 is deemed a crime scene. Frank Smith gets the yellow crime tape out of the car, and about 10 minutes later, forensic personnel start showing up.
You didn't have to be a genius to see this one. A Sig Sauer 40 on the floor. Thomas Rector had been one of the 3 armed robbers at the Lepori holdup. Someone had worked hard to make it look like suicide.
Sig 40, full clip, minus the 1E8.
Same as the gun used on Canarinas. They all had them.
Fume it inside and out in case somebody handled it.
Talked to the neighbors. 60 units and no one heard the shot.
Well, someone heard something. Get back on them, lean on them. Ask about anyone seen coming or going over the last 5 days. What?
Nothing to kill yourself over. Just a bunch of unpaid parking tickets.
Any close to the jewelry store?
Those are for the same address downtown.
What's at 939 East Spring Street?
With 5 parking tickets issued at the same address, detectives drive to 939 East Spring Street to learn just what goes on at this location.
A rundown old movie studio, one of the few left in downtown LA. What was Thomas Rector doing here? Was this connected to the robbery and the murder of Arthur Canarinas?
Yeah, it's a little rundown. But on this stage, Roger Corman shot the House of Usher back in '61.
Detectives meet with the property owner, Dennis Tanaka. Mustache, glasses, 5'7", 170 pounds. Dennis Tanaka and detectives walk in between 2 wooden scaffolds and onto a tiny soundstage with crudely improvised set decoration.
What about over the last few weeks? Been busy?
This stuff is from a foreign company.
4 empty refrigerator boxes, taped arrows on the floor, and 2 orange standalone door frames propped upright on opposite ends of the stage.
Shot some kind of motivational training film.
They have a name?
Invisible Enterprises.
Invisible. It's cute.
Joe Friday gestures to the stairs leading to the top of the scaffolding.
Take a look from up there.
Sure, go ahead.
Dennis Tanaka remains on the floor as detectives, careful of their step, climb to the top of the wooden structure.
Didn't see much of these people. Work nights mostly.
Detectives are now standing about 10 feet off the ground as Friday continues talking with Tanaka.
They leave a deposit?
Yeah, cash, in fact.
Has it been picked up?
Funny you should ask. It hasn't. And the phone number is some cell phone that's been disconnected.
Why bother about a couple of grand security deposit when you scored 40 million in jewels?
The 2 partners look down onto the soundstage. Prompted by a sense of déjà vu, Friday opens his notebook and looks at a still photo from the robbery video.
What do you think they did here?
They rehearsed.
Comparing the hard copy to this bird's eye perspective of the stage, Joe shows the robbery photo to his partner.
You put those boxes where they should be. Over the left, the entry. Over the right, the counters. And the door at the bottom leads to the safe. The entry, the counters, the safe. You're in Lepori's Jewelers. They had their ducks all lined up.
Leaving the building, detectives return to their unmarked squad car. Joe tosses Frank the keys.
You gotta hand it to them. They did their homework. And there's a bonus for the hard work. With Rector dead, the rest of them share a bigger pot. If and when they decide to fence the goods. You don't think it's done yet? 40 million in jewels, that's not an impulse buy. That takes time. The question is, who's in the market for this stuff? I'll tell you who know. The PI from the insurance company.
Frank drives and Joe rides shotgun. 15 minutes later, the two men are at the stately and luxurious Peninsula Hotel.
5-star hotels. Luxury for a price. The insurance company was paying. They wouldn't mind the bill. They had their eyes on something bigger. The return of the Lepori jewels. Katrina Fleury staying here meant only one thing. She was good. She had done this before. She could get the stolen jewels back.
Sitting at a table in the hotel's piano lounge, Katrina Fleury waves at Joe and Frank, and detectives join the private investigator at her table.
The underwriters generated a list of known buyers for gems of this caliber.
So you know who the buyers are? Any idea who the crew was in this?
I know this is not their first robbery.
Well, we kind of figured that.
Oh, so you know about the International Biennale in 99? Same MO. 3 men takedown, wheelman idling outside.
Well, that could have been anybody.
I doubt just anybody issues 6 sour 40s.
She was beautiful. Charming. My partner's eyes were all over her. It wasn't working on me. She had her own agenda. It had nothing to do with ours. And underneath that charm was more than a hint of contempt. She was the international PI. And as far as she was concerned, we weren't in her league.
Making their way back to Robbery-Homicide Unit, detectives take side streets through downtown LA. Frank Smith is a competent driver. Joe sits in the passenger seat and permits himself the luxury of daydreaming. Looking up at the buildings of LA's financial district, he listens to the radio chatter while he thinks about the stolen diamonds. Continuing east along 6th Street, Skid Row gives way to the Arts District, and Joe watches an Asian woman push a green stroller across the street. He looks at a photo still from the robbery video. Was there a connection between former Treasury agent Art Canrinas and the jewelry heist? Sig Sauer 40mm automatic. It's a big gun.
It's the Tear of Aragon.
You've heard of it? Comes the jewelry, solves the man. After getting nothing from Katrina Fleury, I called an old friend from the Diamond District. He knew jewels.
Ironic it was stolen. It has a story.
Here we go.
It was first stolen during the French Revolution along with the Sansi. It was only found last year in Spain. Lepori spent millions for it, and now, stolen again.
So it's got a curse. This doesn't really help us.
More history, more value. This 15-carat round, there's the equivalent of 20 of those in that Lepori tiara. And at Oscar time, too. They picked the right place. You're talking over 25 million here.
And Lepori said 40.
Retail. Actual price, sans Lepori name, always less. But still, big league stuff.
Who could handle something like this?
Hard to say. I don't think you'll ever find the buyers.
First, former Treasury agent Arthur Canrinas is shot at the jewelry store. Then, robber number 2, Thomas Rector, was shot in his hotel room. At Police Ballistics Unit, Dr. Harmon Zell tells detectives what they've found.
This is the slug from the skull of Thomas Rector. This is the slug from Arthur Canrinas.
Same gun?
6 grooves, right twist, 1 in 16. Same gun.
Now let me get this straight. Your robber shoots a customer at the holdup, then goes back to his hotel and shoots himself? You'll pardon me if I say that doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's okay. We don't think it makes any sense either.
Joe Friday's suspicions about the death of Thomas Rector are confirmed at the coroner's office when Dr. Sanjay Ramachandran presents evidence that conclusively rules out suicide.
A dark screen shows substantial traces of phenobarbital and alcohol.
Enough to make him mellow?
Yeah, barbiturates and booze make you very mellow. Well, the entry wound. It's an absence of powder residue. It's a lack of tattooing.
See this abrasion ring?
Silencer? A silencer would explain it.
Would also explain why no one heard the shot.
Which also makes this a homicide.
Homicide? Are you sure?
Coroner said a silencer was used.
And we don't think the rector disposed of the silencer after he blew the back of his own head out.
So Ken Renus happens to be shopping. Rector makes him as the guy who put him away.
Sees an opportunity and he takes revenge.
The guy running the job didn't like it. It's all about control. Rector colored outside the lines. Whoever brought him in killed him.
Thomas Rector's cell phone. Day before the robbery, he got 7 calls from an Eric Harmson. Harmson has a record.
Possession of a firearm in 94. Assault in 99. Armed robbery, also in 99, bumped down to a B&E.
Currently employed at a company called Praetorian Guards.
They do private security for celebrities, politicians.
If Eric Harmson is robber number 3, I know who can tie him in.
Registered felon Eric Harmison made 7 phone calls to robber number 2, Thomas Rector, the day before the robbery. Does this mean Eric Harmison is robber number 3? Probably. But positive identification from a witness trumps probably any day of the week and twice on Sundays.
We took Eric Harmson's mugshot to the studio where the robbers had rehearsed. We got the hit we expected. Eric Harmson was at the rehearsal. He was robber number 3. We drove over to Harmson's employer, Praetorian Guards Private Security. They serviced movie stars, protected their houses, and on Oscar night they were in the crowd protecting their clients. An outfit this well connected didn't make sense. Why would they hire an ex-con like Eric Harmson?
I'm Alex Van Looy. I own Praetorian Guards.
Detective Friday is my partner, Frank Smith.
Hey. Owner and CEO of Praetorian Guards, Alex Van Looy stands 5'11", weighs 215 pounds, with the athletic physique of a weightlifter or possibly judo practitioner. Probably both. Joe asks Van Looy about robber number 3.
Eric Harmson, is he around?
No, he's on vacation. He's not in some sort of trouble.
We're just gathering information, just want to talk to him.
Joe instantly gets a bad vibe, which he mostly hides behind professional demeanor. But quietly, Joe sees Van Looy as an obnoxious rich kid, a slick miscreant with a sense of entitlement and an expensive suit. Joe asks Van Looy,
"Where's he vacationing?"
I believe he said Morocco.
What can you tell us about him? Was he a good employee?
He's been here about a year.
Who was this guy kidding? He had to guess where an employee went on vacation? Not likely. He was playing dumb. He was anything but.
Well, he doesn't have a background in law enforcement, unlike most of our personnel, so he does mainly outside work.
So you took a chance on someone who's perhaps a little underqualified?
Taking chances? No. Not in the security business. Listen, if you suspect that he's been involved in something shady, I certainly need to know about it.
Well, when we know, you'll know. Thanks for all your help.
Pleasure.
Back at Robbery-Homicide Unit, the pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, literally. A large bulletin board has been erected as Joe and Frank give Captain Hagerman a who's who briefing on the case.
Here's number 1, Alex Van Looy.
Joe pins a face shot at the top of the corkboard, which completes a pyramid of other individual faces beneath it.
Alex Van Looy.
Army Ranger, weapons expert, worked as a consultant for auction houses before opening Praetorian Guards.
According to his press kit, he's a world-renowned threat assessment authority.
Is he as good as he says?
Well, here's the proof. Look what he left us. Thomas Rector dead. Eric Harmson gone.
Frank Smith takes the call.
Gotta hand it to him. Stealing the Oscar jewels is a hell of a stunt.
More than a stunt. He's in it for the thrill.
Joe, Eric Harmson has a wife. She lives in Van Nuys.
Detectives get on the 101 freeway and head north toward Van Nuys. Frank Smith drives as Joe Friday uses the dash-mounted laptop to request backup, then obtain a search and arrest warrant for Eric Harmson. 5 minutes after transitioning to the 405 north, Joe and Frank get off at the Victory off-ramp and pull into an abandoned strip mall about a mile west of the home of Eric Harmson. The parking lot is empty, but for one abandoned car and an LAPD black and white squad car. Joe and Frank park their car, then exit the vehicle, and are greeted by Sergeant Ernie Guerra and Officer 3, Wendy Phillips. Joe and Frank open the trunk and strap on their Aardvark Level 3A ballistic vests as Joe Friday briefs cops on the details of the warrant. Violent jewelry heist and the bloody homicide of former Treasury agent Arthur Canrinas, as well as their own team member, Robber Number 2, Thomas Rector. Listening attentively, Officers Guerra and Phillips check their sidearms, ammo clips, and body armor. Probably now at his home address, Robber Number 3, Eric Harmison, is considered armed and extremely dangerous. On the warrant, Judge Preston Stephen initialed the box, use of deadly force authorized, to which Friday adds, as of now, gun safeties are at officers' discretion. The 4 law enforcement officers approach the front door, and Sergeant Guerra rings the doorbell. The door is opened by a well-dressed Corinne Harmison, blonde, 40 years of age, 5'7", 130 pounds. She appears unarmed.
Mrs. Harmison, we're looking for your husband.
Eric's not here.
We have a warrant to search the premises. This is your copy. Pardon me.
You can't just come in like this.
Got a district court judge who begs to differ. Just please have a seat, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the house?
Joe opens the door and Corinne lunges at him.
No, not in there. No,
Fast
not
on their
in there.
feet, Frank Smith and Officer Wendy Phillips drag her away from Joe Friday.
It's all right.
Everything's all right.
They open the door to find a 10-year-old child laying silent in a hospital bed and wearing an oxygen mask.
Everything's all right. Just playing a game.
What's wrong with him?
He has cystic fibrosis. He's sick and you're scaring him.
Is this Eric's son?
Yes, now please leave him alone.
You could have told us there was a kid in there, ma'am.
You just came barging in my house.
Found this wadded up in a trash can near his computer. Thanks. Joe, travel itinerary, Mexicana Airlines. Looks like Eric went to Oaxaca.
Is your husband in the habit of taking vacations and leaving you at home?
Oliver wasn't well enough to travel.
Joe, seems and guest, Katrina Fleury.
Where'd you get this?
She came here looking for Eric. She said he was owed money.
I'll finish the search. You find Fleury.
All right.
Using Katrina Fleury's business card, Frank sends her a text message. Katrina, important we meet face-to-face ASAP. Frank Smith, LAPD. Katrina's reply comes in 3 minutes. Peninsula Hotel, room 713. Soon, KF. 20 minutes later, Frank pulls into the Peninsula Hotel, and the two meet in the lobby. Frank advises Fleury in no uncertain terms that she is interfering with a police investigation, and if she persists, she could face charges, possibly be deported, or both. In the meantime, Frank and his partner, Joe Friday, demand Katrina come in for questioning. She can accompany Frank Smith voluntarily or in handcuffs. Wisely, the insurance investigator chooses the former, and Frank drives Katrina back to Robbery-Homicide.
Ms. Fleury, I thought we had a shared agenda.
I've been duly scolded by your partner. I've apologized and given assurance it won't happen again.
Fine. Have a seat. Can I interest you in a donut or something?
No, I'm fine.
So, she spoke with Corinne Harmson, who said she has been in contact with Eric.
Lied to us, gives it up to a PI. Cut us in on your technique, Ms. Fleury.
I simply empathize with a lonely wife. You catch more bees with honey, detective.
Well, we found out that Eric Harmson has dual citizenship with Mexico. So even if the federales find him, it's unlikely they'll extradite.
So our killer runs free. When the country's corrupt, this guy's gonna escape.
All American xenophobia.
What?
Fear and or suspicion of foreigners.
I suppose the question is, does it apply to me?
Now, is there anything else for us, Miss Fleury?
She looks at Eric Harmison's flight itinerary and instantly takes notice of his method of payment.
Harmson's itinerary?
It is.
The first 4 numbers here are specific to the Amex Black Card. You have to charge $100,000 annually to maintain membership. Having seen Harmson's house, I doubt he's charged $100,000 in his lifetime.
Very good. Who does the card belong to?
That's for the police to find out.
Admonished to stay out of their way, Katrina is free to go. Detective Frank Smith calls American Express, hoping to find out who owns the card that paid for robber number 3, Eric Harmison's flight to Mexico. Robber number 2, Thomas Rector, was killed in his hotel room. And that just leaves robber number 1, the leader of the 3-man team. Joe finds himself once again watching the robbery video.
My partner was checking on the black Amex card. I had a fairly good idea whose name was on it. He was right in front of me, on the screen.
Hey, Joe.
What?
Our black card belongs to one Alexander Van Looy.
Friday and Smith begin surveillance on Alex Van Looy.
You can be the best and still not be perfect. Alex Van Looy had made one crucial mistake. He left a trail tying himself to the members of his team. They were tied to the robbery. All we had to do was connect the last dot. We had enough for a warrant to tap Van Looy's phones. We put surveillance on him round the clock. Within 24 hours, we thought we'd caught a break.
We need to meet. My place is no good.
Maybe we should put this off.
No, tonight. The 6th Street Bridge.
Detectives contact Rampart Division and coordinate a sting at the 6th Street Bridge.
Right on schedule. Was he selling the Lepori jewels? Maybe. But why do this in a dark tunnel? He's theatrical. He likes the game. But was there another reason?
The game is on. 11 p.m. In the mobile command unit 2 blocks away, Joe and Frank use infrared binoculars when they see the 2 cars enter and park beneath the 6th Street Bridge. Each driver exits his vehicle. Van Looy carries a briefcase, and the other man, the buyer, holds a duffel bag. As soon as Van Looy hands the man his briefcase,
all units move in. Take him now. Take him now.
LAPD, put your hands up. Right now. Hands. Keep them up now. Be careful with those. Up against the wall.
Coins. A nice choice, Detective. A Roman Claudius, minted somewhere between 41 and 54 A.D.
Coins. You want to explain yourself?
Explain a fascination with ancient Rome? You know, the original Praetorian Guards were protectors of the imperial throne.
Usually trade coins at night in a tunnel? I think this is for our benefit. I think you read our surveillance, and you decided to stick it up. You're smart. Maybe a little too concerned with other people finding out.
Are you suggesting I act dumb? Does that work for you?
Well, we won't find that out until the fat lady sings.
The next morning at Robbery-Homicide Unit, Joe and Frank discuss their next move.
It's a very elaborate plan just to make us look bad.
Well, he's a pretty elaborate guy. I mean, look at that rehearsal.
The homicide?
Well, that wasn't planned. So we didn't count on that. That's why he killed the guy who killed the guy. Get us off his scent.
So he doesn't care if he sells the jewels?
He wouldn't sell them out of need. But he might sell them to get back in the game.
Game?
The game he's playing with us. The game he needs to get off.
Any idea what his next move is?
Well, I'll just ask him.
11:30 a.m. Joe pays Alex Van Looy a surprise visit at the Intercontinental Century City Hotel.
I need the northeast exit sealed and 2 men up on top.
The spacious Commodore Ballroom is in a state of pre-assembly as caterers, decorators, and maintenance people prepare for the annual Mateo Athletics Banquet. Detective Friday enters the ballroom as Van Looy is barking important-sounding orders into his Bluetooth.
Well, tell the fire marshal who's really in charge here.
Back at the day job.
Easy. My lawyer might interpret this visit as harassment.
Van Looy walks off briskly. Joe accompanies him.
Oh, I'm just here for advice, security concerns. I was told you were the best. As you know, someone took down a jewelry store, shot someone in the process.
Peter Lepori. Unfortunate that a man was killed.
Clearly unintended.
They stop at a table with a bucket full of water bottles buried in ice.
We have a suspect. How would he unload the jewels?
How would I know?
Van Looy grabs a bottle for himself and hands one to Joe.
Get recovery from the underwriters. Found the shooter and killed himself with the murder weapon.
What you just said about the murder weapon is sealed evidence.
Most of my staff are ex-law enforcement. I hear things.
Van Looy's pearly white smile is as condescending as it is expensive.
Listen, you got a dead suspect, a ballistic match. It's closure.
Van Looy's attaboy smack on Joe's arm is much more hostile than it is friendly. Friday knows this chump has been at stake, and without blinking an eye, Joe continues his field interview.
Closure. It's an overused word.
And I guess you've hit a dead end.
Well, I don't think anybody
Even the man I'm after really wants that.
Are you suggesting he's a fool?
No, he's hardly a fool. No, he's well worth the effort.
You may be out of your league.
How about those Angels, though? You're not a sports fan. That's too bad. Arthur Canrinas was.
Sad when it's one of your own. I mean, this guy was a federal agent of some sort, was he not?
You're well informed about a lot of things.
I have to be. My outfit's just like yours. We're very, very close.
Friday looks at Van Looy's lapel pin.
That pin?
Yeah, I had it made for all the senior personnel.
The face of a Roman soldier with an inscription, which Joe reads,
Caveat Praetoria.
Latin. It means, beware the Praetorians.
What's the word on Eric Harmson coming back?
Hard to say. Man goes to a warm climate. He finds a new life. He forgets his family ties.
Or he finds he can't forget them.
This time Joe Friday walks away, hoping Van Looy doesn't realize the implications of what's just been said.
He flinched. Now we had to squeeze. We needed his number 3 guy back in the country. There was one person who could help us.
Katrina Fleury has established a good rapport with the wife of robber number 3. Good cop, bad cop, and both want the same thing, to apprehend robber number 3, Eric Harmison. Sharing common interests, the insurance investigator agrees to assist LAPD by setting up a meeting with Corinne Harmison. Later that evening, in the Harmisons' living room, Joe and Frank interview Corinne Harmison, this time with Katrina Fleury playing good cop while Joe and Frank play the heavies. The interview gets off to a rocky start when Corinne lies about having spoken with her husband.
I didn't lie. We haven't talked.
We know you received 3 calls from Oaxaca in the last 3 days.
I'm not lying.
He didn't call to talk to his son?
My son has nothing to do with this.
Corinne, my brother has a boy with leukemia. I know the strain of everyday life.
She was good. She was very good. She'd say anything. A nephew with leukemia? Harmison's wife, a lonely woman with a sick child. Fleury knew all her buttons.
That his condition is taking a turn for the worse.
But his condition hasn't changed.
Eric doesn't know that. A boy needs his father.
Friday and Smith say goodnight and wait outside, allowing the women to talk, just the 2 of them. 10 minutes later, Katrina exits through the front door and gives detectives the information they came for.
Mexicana flight 131 from Mexico City, arriving LAX tomorrow at 3:14 p.m.
Good job, Miss Fleury.
Yeah, we owe you one.
I'll take you up on that. Who's paying Harmson's way? Did you check the numbers on that black card?
Go ahead, tell her.
A guy named Alex Van Looy.
And you're checking into him?
Of course.
Look, I'm sorry about your nephew. Leukemia and all that sounds tough.
She doesn't have a nephew. Do you? Anything else you want to tell me?
Nothing comes to mind. Well, I have things to do.
Good night.
Once Katrina is out of earshot, Frank asks Joe,
You sure you want her knowing about Van Looy?
She asked for the name of our lead suspect. You give it to her. She's content. Doesn't push for details. What does that tell you?
She already knew.
She might know a whole lot more.
Robbery-Homicide. The following morning, Frank gets useful information from LAPD's Special Investigation Section.
Thank you. Surveillance on Van Looy's paid off. Katrina Fleury went to his office twice in the past 24 hours.
Trying to buy back the jewels.
Last time I checked the criminal code, buying stolen property was illegal.
Insurance companies don't care. They want the jewels. They'll offer 15, 20 million, get the jewels back, save 20 million by not paying on the claim.
The units at LAX called. Eric Harmson's plane came in.
He wasn't on it, was he?
No, and he's not in the manifest of any other Mexicana flight today.
My guess, Fleury gives Van Looy the heads up, buys her credibility.
And then Van Looy warns his boy Harmson.
I want SIS on Katrina Fleury 24/7.
Done.
She's been using us to put the heat on Van Looy. She thinks it'll push him to sell the jewels.
She played us. Now it's our turn.
12 noon. Captain Ruth Hagerman gets a time-sensitive email from SIS. The protocol is most important information comes first, but it's a long email and Hagerman reads it completely to ensure she doesn't miss anything. During this time, Joe Friday and Frank Smith have their faces buried in a video monitor, watching, yet again, the security tape of the jewelry heist.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Ben Franklin said that. He'd have made a lousy cop.
Tell me again what we're looking for.
Whatever we missed.
It's a 2-minute tape, Joe. We've watched it 50 times.
I'll watch it 50 more.
Finally, Joe sees it. The customer, Art Canarinas, was shot, which leaves a bullet that police trace back to Thomas Rector's Sig Sauer automatic. On the other hand, Van Looy, a weapons expert, thinks about ballistics evidence. That's why Van Looy does not shoot, but instead only pistol whips. And why he picks up number 2's shell casings on the way out the door. It's all about not leaving a trail of evidence. The team must have had a do-not-shoot policy. Not for ethical reasons, but for evidence reasons. Before cops traced the bullet back to Thomas Rector, he too had to be killed. This also explains the physical size of the gun. The Sig Sauer 40 was chosen to scare people, and if need be, it could be used as a club. But these guns were intended to go unfired and remain clean as glass.
SIS followed Katrina Fleury to the Bank of Zurich on Rodeo. She withdrew $15 million from the insurance company's account.
She made a deal with Van Looy.
I'm having her picked up.
Don't pick her up yet.
I'm not in the habit of letting insurance companies buy back stolen merchandise.
I need Van Looy. I need him arrestable. Trust me, the only way it works is we let it play out.
Hagerman is dubious, but she trusts Joe Friday's judgment.
SIS picked up Katrina Fleury headed west toward the ocean. She was ready to make her deal.
Friday calls ahead to request backup. 10 minutes later, detectives stop at a pre-designated gas station where they are greeted by 4 plainclothes officers from Santa Monica PD. Friday briefs cops that their suspects, Alex Van Looy and Katrina Fleury, are wanted in connection with 2 murders plus a $25 million jewelry heist. A former U.S. Army Ranger, Alex Van Looy is a contracted weapons expert and is considered armed and extremely dangerous. During the briefing, Frank Smith receives a text message from SIS, which he reads aloud. Van Looy loitering at far end of Santa Monica Pier. Fleury parked car, taxi en route to Santa Monica Pier, ETA 15 minutes. Friday, Smith and the arrest team mobilize and take Colorado westbound.
We caught up with Katrina Fleury at the amusement park on the Santa Monica Pier.
Using binoculars, Joe and Frank watch as Katrina, smiling flirtatiously, approaches Alex Van Looy, who stands, leaning against the guardrail.
There's our guy.
Van Looy's at the end of the pier. Let's take him.
Badges out, weapons drawn. The arrest team converges on the 2 suspects.
Oh, you missed the best part. Okay? She has 4 checks in her purse. She was trying to buy the stolen Lepori gems.
Which, of course, you don't have.
Of course not.
You let him con you?
I didn't con her. She tried to engage me in a criminal activity.
You son of a bitch!
She kicks at Van Looy, but cops hold Katrina back.
I recorded everything you said. He offered the jewels.
But I've got it on my tape right here. It was all a ploy so she'd come forward.
I bet you'd even testify to that.
Absolutely.
Would you object to a body search?
Of course not.
Detective Friday frisks Van Looy, stops, and removes a familiar pistol from Van Looy's jacket, left side inner pocket.
Sig Sauer 40.
Joe drops the gun into an evidence envelope.
Choice of weapon for the Lepori crew.
A common sidearm. Oh, and I have it carried through.
You have it with you?
Come on.
Well, I guess we bring you in for a CCW.
Come on, detective.
Hands behind your back.
You don't have a scintilla of physical evidence connecting me with those gems. And it pisses you off.
You're right about that. We'll be bringing Mr. Van Looy in and in charge of negotiating the sale of stolen jewels.
What, on her testimony?
For now.
I'll discredit her in 5 minutes.
Get out of here.
Holding the yellow evidence envelope containing Van Looy's pistol, Friday wears a happy smile as both suspects are taken away in handcuffs.
You know he's right, Joe.
I don't care. I wanted this.
Joe pats the yellow envelope. 1 hour later, Joe stops in at ballistics, where Dr. Harmon Zell is halfway through a battery of forensic tests on the recently confiscated Sig Sauer 40 automatic registered to Alex Van Looy.
Van Looy's?
Clean. Probably never fired.
Do the ultraviolet?
This is it.
Joe skims the report and says,
All right, I want a macro-micro, type and cross-match.
I'll have it in an hour.
Dr. Sells seals the gun, attaches the paperwork, and takes the package down to the lab. Meanwhile, upstairs in the small interview room 4, Katrina Fleury has completed her sworn statement. While most people have departed, Katrina remains seated at the table, and at the opposite end of the room, Frank Smith stands casually leaning against the file cabinet.
I was just trying to deliver him to you, Frank. Think about it. Didn't you hear the tape? Did you listen? We talked about the jewels.
And you talked more than he did. You led him.
My job is to save my company money. After the deal was done, I was going to share all my information with you.
Don't embarrass yourself. You played us and you were playing him. Sharp. I'll give you that. You know, I made a little phone call myself to Mr. Clybourne. He's your boss in New York. Played him that tape of yours. He was amazed when you offered Van Looy $12 million since he transferred 15. So you tried to screw them, and they hung you out to dry. He also mentioned he's gonna press charges.
You'll never prove I wasn't just negotiating.
Anything else you want to trade?
Whatever I've got, I'll save it for Mr. Clybourne. I assume I'm free to go?
Yeah. They'll come find you.
As Katrina walks out to the parking lot, Alex Van Looy sits in a holding cell 4 stories underground. The jewel thief murderer wears a gray jumpsuit and handcuffs, which are attached to the bench on which he sits. Joe Friday enters the room, empty-handed.
Go for a chat.
Well, I guess there's a little time before my attorneys arrive.
I would remind you, you're under no obligation to speak without presence of counsel.
Somehow I'm just not concerned.
Regarding the fact that you didn't bring the jewels to the meet, I can only assume that you were going to take the money and stiff her on the merchandise.
Assuming I haven't had any merchandise.
My guess is that you probably laid the jewels off right after the robbery. This underwriter's thing.
Detective Frank Smith enters the room and hands Joe a small stack of photographs.
Just icing on the cake.
You give me an enormous amount of credit, Detective. It's really, it's flattering stuff.
I think that's everything there.
Thanks, Frank. We're going to share this with Mr. Van Looy. Now, I know you'll probably allege that you don't know this man.
Joe Friday displays a glossy photo taken of a 30-something Caucasian man with bloody head wounds.
Who is it?
His name is Elias Watson. He's a security guard at the Peter Laporte jewelry store.
I guarantee I don't know this man.
Now, this is your gun.
Joe shows Van Looy a close-up of his Sig Sauer 40 automatic.
Now, I know you wiped it down after the robbery, but a small amount of dried human blood was found here, in this groove, between the frame rails and the slide.
Leaning in, Joe points at the glossy.
It matches the blood type of Elias Watson. And I'm sure that DNA is going to confirm that. Physical evidence puts you at the robbery. We get to charge you with a felony murder.
I'll wait for my attorney before any further conversation.
Enjoy the wait.
Joe does recall Van Looy's little lecture on Roman coins from under the bridge the other night.
One more thing, and this in no way is related to the investigation. That lapel pin.
What?
Well, it says caveat praetoria. Should be cave praetorum. See, the case is imperative, not nominative. And praetoria is accusative, not ablative.
Completely unamused, Van Looy sits shackled to the bench, glaring hatefully at Friday.
Those nuns in parochial school. You learn Latin or your knuckles bleed. What do you say, Frank? Enjoy some free time?
Yes. It's not over.
You got some plan to beat the system, you save it for your attorney. For me...
Friday smiles, gives Van Loy an attaboy smack on the arm.
This is closure. Go on in. Van Loy's got to run something by you.
The prospect of spending one's life in an 8x10 cell does funny things to a man. Van Loy quickly offered up Eric Harmson and his wheelman. Giving up the jewels could have cut his sentence even more. But a guy like this needs a final move. The jewels were his.
Katrina Fleury pled down to a felony obstruction charge. She was deported back to England, where her employment with Seams and Guest was terminated. Alex Van Loy was convicted of armed robbery and the felony murder of Arthur Canrinas. He was sentenced to 20 years to be served at Pelican Bay. Eric Harmson remains at large. He is being sought for armed robbery and a felony murder role. Story you